I gotta say, sometimes it is actually about the micro action that adds up to the bigger picture and change the outcome entirely. Before you ask yourself, okay, what is the next action step to take in order for me to enter a new income bracket, or for me to manifest, let's say, new friendship of entrepreneur women that are so ambitious and like-minded like me, or whatever the case might be, you might just want to ask yourself, not just what is the action for me to take next, but more so, how am I taking this action? Because how you take your action is directly linked to the identity that you uphold as a person, and that is the key to get everything you're already doing to start working in ways that you cannot even fathom. Welcome back to the podcast. It is me, your host, as always, Malika. Now, hello to all of the new girlies that are joining in and tuning in and joining your community. I am so excited to have you here, and happy Tuesday to every single one of you. I hope you are ready for this conversation that we're having today, because it is going to completely alter how you think about taking actions and what you are working towards or what you want to manifest next into your life. I am telling you, this is something that I don't see a lot of people talking about. And I think that it's just because most people don't know about this. But especially when you are someone who is highly ambitious, who is always looking to improve your life, to get more out of every single aspect of your life, because that's just the kind of person that you are. I feel like that kind of person needs it way more than everybody else. This is, I'm telling you, like, I don't think that I've ever heard anyone talked about this before. And so I hope you're ready. Go grab your matcha. I did make this homemade matcha. I literally found a new brand into IGA that I absolutely love, and it tastes so good. So I've been trying out new matchas, basically new matcha powders, and this one is definitely a hit by far. So anyways, go on your hot girl walk, plug me in your ears, and let's unpack this, okay? Something that I've referred to multiple times before is that effort doesn't always equal getting the same level of result, right? And so it's not because you put in this much amount of effort that you're going to get this amount of result, right? If you're not putting in effort or anything, like, it's not like you're not gonna get anything, right? But that's not really what I'm referring to when I say this, right? When I say this, what I'm referring to is that it's not always just about the action itself that determines the outcome that you get, but it's also how you are taking the action, right? So the energy, the identity, the mindset and the belief behind it that will ultimately shapes the result of how it lands and how it feels, or what opportunities kind of like show up along the way. And this is exactly why some people, for example, will buy a course or a high-level mentorship, and then they will succeed way past anyone else, and then you have some that like get into the same exact container or the same exact training or the same exact thing, but they like nothing really changes. It's the same reason why, for example, let's say someone has a business, they've been working months and months towards like having this new income bracket, and then they look around and someone else seems to like get it like this, like so quickly, so effortlessly, while they seem like they have to push and work so much harder than the other person to get it. And so this is the way I like to think about it, right? There is an infinite amount of ways that any outcome can come into fruition or to life. Okay, so for example, you could hit this new milestone or this next milestone and you could feel amazing, or you could take the same action but get completely unexpected results, or you could hit this milestone but literally feel so frustrated and like you should be further along and you're not satisfied. And this is the thing, small components creates really big differences, okay? Because again, it's not just about how, like what action you're taking, but it's how you are taking it that will ultimately affects not just the bucket itself that it lands in, but what the bucket ends up becoming because of how you've taken that action. And so what I like to think of is kind of like, imagine that this action that you're taking or what you're working towards or what you're doing right now, there's a bunch of different buckets that could like fall into, right? And so how you are taking these action will ultimately shape this, like how the bucket is, and also how the bucket like ends up feeling when you are in that, right? And here's what I find really interesting. Most of the time, it doesn't just change the result of the action that you are already taking, but it can completely change the action that you decide to take next. Meaning that it literally alters the way that you view what you have to do next or how you show up next. And ultimately, again, this links with like who you are as a person or your identity, right? This ultimately starts to get you ideas that like you never would have thought of before, or it would have never even crossed your mind because it would not have aligned with your identity, right? But since now that you do get to change how you are taking that action, not just the action that you're taking, then you get to have an infinite amount of possibilities pour in that actually even serves you even more than you could have ever imagined. For example, I still remember there was one summer when this was back a few years ago, and I still remember I was getting really frustrated because I felt like I was not really good enough to get, the clients that I wanted to have, or to really get paid the amount that I really wanted to get paid. And the content that I was posting online, like it was working, but it was not like really working on the level that I wish it was working. And so I was really getting kind of frustrated, and I always felt kind of like this, I don't know, like I was taking these action from kind of like a lack place of like, oh, I feel so like frustrated with myself and like what I'm getting or whatever. And I didn't just change the action that I was taking, but I realized that there was another action that I should be taking, and then I started taking that action instead, but that was not even in my horizon. And next thing you know, I opened up my computer to get my first 2 inquiries from clients number 1 who paid $2,000 and clients number 2 who paid $6,000, not just because I changed the action that I was taking per se, but I changed how I was taking the action, like from which identity I was taking it and why I was taking it almost, you know what I mean? And that is also when I started to travel more. And I still remember that time when I went to Miami and I bought a dinner for $500, which is something that I would have never have done before. And it was kind of like almost this like ripple effect of like, okay, like it opened up my horizon, and then I took an action that I would have never taken before, which was, paying for a dinner for $500, and it was in USD too. So that's like Canadian. It's like, I don't know, like 700, I don't know. And that's something I would have never done before, but then it also changed my perception about money, and it changed my perception about my value about myself. And it, like, you know what I mean? But like all of these things like would have not been possible if it wasn't for the fact of how I changed the way I was taking my action, not just the action itself, because then it expanded my mind to, oh, this is what I need to do. Like, this is not like, but like that is not even something that entered my consciousness because of the identity that I was attaching to these actions that I was taking before, and how I was creating my content and how I was showing up for, to attract my clients and everything. So kind of like all like a big ripple effect, okay? But honestly, I would have to say that like the biggest game changer is when you start seeing the actions that you take as an extension of yourself, not just the outcome as an extension of your worth. And I feel like that's something that can be very easily blurred into, especially when it's kind of like the high achiever curse, which is kind of like, I feel like it can be easy to kind of blur these lines together, which is like, instead of thinking of these goals or these things that enrich your life as like an extension of you, it becomes kind of like a reflection or a proof of your worth, right? But that doesn't feel expensive on an identity level, right? At some point, it just starts to feel suffocating. Like you're just like, okay, I'm over this. Like, you know? And so that's why it's so important that every single thing that we do, you know, it's a reflection of our value and not a proof of worth. It's just like an extension of you. Like it's an extension of like you already have all of that worth, and like every single thing that like comes into play and that like manifests and that happens is just an extension of you, of the worth and the value that you already have, and not like the proof of it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I hope I'm explaining this well. And this doesn't just apply to, you know, reaching a new income bracket, but this is literally, it could be anything. You know, it could be like, okay, you want to live in a completely different country for like 2 years and like really like expand your circle there, or like expand your reputation there, and you want to manifest like a bigger friend group that like just gets you, and like that are all like entrepreneurial and everything, like all that stuff. Like, but it's just about getting out of the same old loop. And I know that that can seem kind of like really contradictory a little bit, because most of the time like we don't feel like we are in the same old loop. Like we just feel like we are taking the next action step. Like, okay, this is the next step to getting to this goal. Like, this is the next step to getting more friendship. This is the next step to building a bigger reputation. This is the next step to organizing a mastermind. This is the next step to, you know what I mean? But this is the thing, right? It's always driven by a common denominator, which is your identity, which is not just the action that you take, but how you take the action. Okay, this is what I'm always coming back to. I really hope I'm drilling this into your brain, into your beautiful brain, okay? And you truly want to get everything that you're already doing to work for you in ways that like are just unimaginable, like just on a whole different level that like you cannot even fathom or imagine. It's about really breaking that like time loop that like drives these like original actions that you take. For example, let's say that you take your action from the energy of, well, I'm taking this action because I want to be further along, but what's really behind it is an identity that's always telling you, well, I'm behind. Like, you know, like I should be further along. Like I'm behind. Like, you know, like that is gonna take you a whole, like how you're gonna take your action is gonna look entirely different from if you are taking it from the place of, I am so abundant right now and I get to amplify that shit. Like, that's different. That's very different. And like I mentioned before, like most of the time that will actually drive you to take different action that you would have never taken prior, which starts doing kind of like this ripple effect of like, holy shit, like, you know, how I was taking these action or working towards this new milestone or this new things that I want to manifest, like was working, but now it's working in ways that like I can't even fathom. Like, you know, because now you're just getting out of your own way. You're getting out of this old loop and you're taking action from a place of like, yeah, this is just so different. Like, you know, it feels different. It lands in the different bucket that you actually want the outcome and that you actually feel amazing. So that's what we want, right? And the same applies to, let's say that you are investing in a program or a mentorship without a single doubt in yourself and without a single doubt not needing any second opinion. Or let's say that you want to buy this new car that makes you feel like a bad bitch, that makes you feel like you are that girl, and you know that like this will raise how you are showing up, and that will put even more fire under your ass and be like, yes, like I am so freaking excited. That's what it kind of starts doing. You know, it starts like amplifying these different actions that just live on a different frequency. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it drives these actions that lives on a different frequency and that keeps pulling you higher and higher, where you also feel more and more amazing about yourself and about everything that you're doing and about the impact that you're creating. Or one of my all-time favorites, especially when I work with clients, is seeing like how they start to sell themselves in a way that not only feels so natural, but that starts converting so effortlessly like never before. And it's not just simply because of the action that is being taken, but it's also how the action is being taken and the identity that is driven behind that can actually back up the selling that they're doing. I hope this makes sense. Like, I hope I'm explaining this well. Well, sometimes you can see someone else that like has the milestone that you want, or that has achieved a goal that you are working towards right now. And so, for example, person A might succeed because they are very structured and logical, but maybe person B is more about intuition and emotion and storytelling and creativity, but then they start trying to be like person A, but they completely forget about their own strength, right? And this is the thing that happens most of the time when people try to mimic or kind of like replicate the milestone or the thing that like other people are doing that they believe will kind of like get them at that same place. This is the thing, when you try so hard to become the next version of someone else, you kind of stop becoming and working towards the most powerful version of you. And I really want you to sink that in. You know, sometimes when we try so hard to become the next version of someone else, then you ultimately stop becoming the most powerful version of yourself. Stop trying to show up as this next version of yourself that is ultimately fitting the box of this person that you aspire to. This is honestly something that I see over and over again, and it happens not even purposefully. Like it happens like almost unconsciously, because our mind is made up to always get you to, you know, what you're focusing on and what you want, right? And so obviously if you aspire to this milestone or this thing that like this person has, and you're like, oh well, look, like they took ABC step, guess what your brain is going to tell you? But you want to lean into your version of your most powerful self, not someone else's. And I feel like that's the thing, like it happens almost unconsciously, like without even realizing. You kind of like slowly start absorbing these traits and this way of like, you kind of start becoming this next version of like this person instead of the most powerful version of you. And that is the most powerful thing that you can have as a CEO, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And this is exactly why, for example, so many people know it logically. They're like, I need to stand out and show how I'm different. Like logically, people know this, right? But a lot of people end up doing the opposite, and they end up looking at other people and what other people are doing. And slowly their brand and even them or their service start blurring in with everybody else's, or it just doesn't really feel like it's working as good as them. And that is exactly why, right? It's kind of like most of the time this happens kind of like unintentionally to a lot of people. How you take your action directly links to your identity, which was what I was saying at the beginning of the episode, right? Because the more that you understand how you succeed at your best, okay, and what makes you different, then you get to turn that into your edge. And that is when your marketing, your personal brand, your content, even the things that you want to manifest, that it's like moving to a new city or like getting a bigger groups of friends or whatever it is, we're actually taking it from such a different place into your identity, and how you are showing up is different, and how you are taking the action is different. And doing that gets to amplify into every single aspect of your life. And that is exactly why the micro action that you take can really add up. Not just at the outcome that you end up getting, but which bucket it kind of falls into. And like I mentioned previously, most of the time, when you start changing the way that you are taking your action, it will actually influence you to take a different action you would have never taken before. Because you realize, holy shit, like this action that I'm taking is kind of like attached to this current identity that I have, but I need to step out for me to get this unimaginable result or outcome. And you actually get to feel and enjoy all of the benefits from everything that you're already doing, or that you already are implementing, or that you already are working towards. Okay, so I really hope that you absolutely love this episode. If you did, make sure to send it to a friend, or leave a review on the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really helps giving us a rating on the podcast, pushing it out to more like-minded women and grow our community. So thank you so much for the time that you take doing that. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I know you want to. And I will meet you here next week. Stay amazing. Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in, and don't forget to leave your 5-star rate and review on the podcast. I love to know what you guys think of the episodes, and I will meet you here next week.